Yes, yes, y'all. We're here. We're here. I didn't do much announcing of this. I forgot to announce it on Shoot the Breeze the other night. But Bobby Wright, who's usually in the chat, he sent this to me a little while ago, and I figured I'd do a watch party for this documentary on the day of MLK. MLK Day. So I'm sticking to it. This is not going to be really a commentary from me. I'm just really showing the footage. I'm hoping that people will show up in the chat and we can have a vigorous conversation in the chat while the documentary is playing. And at the end, if enough people ask me to, I'll open up the stream for a live discussion. So it's all up to you guys. I see Real Black Gentleman is here. Real Black Gentleman saying, "What's up?" I appreciate you coming through, RBG. I'm just getting started, just letting folks know what's happening. We're doing this watch party for the Assassination of MLK documentary that Bobby Wright forwarded to me a couple weeks back. And I mentioned it to him that I should do a watch show, and I am coming through with the watch show. I didn't do a lot of hype for it, so we might not get a huge amount of people. I see Nancy Annette is here. Peace to Nancy. She said greetings to her. Yeah, so without further ado, I guess I'm going to start the show. You know what? I'm going to give it a minute. I'm going to wait till 6:05. I'll start the documentary. In the meantime, you know what you guys can do? Drop your thoughts on MLK. Let me put that in the chat. Drop your thoughts on MLK Jr. I'd really like to hear what do you guys have to say about MLK, being that this is his day in America. Drop your thoughts on MLK. I'll put them up on the screen throughout the showing of the documentary. And again, at the end, if folks want to, by all means, we can open up the lines and have a discussion about what you saw, or have a discussion about, in general, your thoughts on MLK and the movement, etc. So, without further ado, it's 6:05. It's enough time for folks to have got the notification and come on through. I'm going to play it. My mic is going to be muted. Tanzan says Amani to Tanzan. Thanks for coming through. I'm going to mute my mic and just play the film. And you guys drop your comments as the film goes along, all right? I'll see you guys after the film.
Nonviolence is not the way. I mean, we'll never get it by marching. Nobody never got anything by marching. You never got anything by sitting down. If you have to sit down to get something, you'll never get it. So the best way to get it is to get up and go get it, if that's what you want, if you really want it.
And even if every black person in America got together and asserted himself violently, I still don't believe this would be the answer. Because I don't believe, number one, that we can win. And number two, I'm not at all convinced that this is the way to effect a meaningful, lasting change.
The problem is, can we get into the system or get someone into the system to introduce the changes that are necessary, or will the people have to remain outside of the system and really destroy it?
If any of you around, when I have to meet my day, I don't want a long funeral. And if you get somebody to deliver the eulogy, tell them not to talk too long. Every now and then I wonder what I want them to say. Tell them not to mention that I have a Nobel Peace Prize. That isn't important. Tell them not to mention that I have 300 or 400 other awards. That's not important. Tell them not to mention where I went to school. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to say that day that I tried to be right on the war question. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness.
I just figured to walk out the door when a special bulletin flashed on the television that Dr. King had been shot. And I just stood there, you know, a long time. And then a little while later, they said Dr. King was dead. My anger was that of any other black person anywhere in the United States. The 4th of April, how could this happen to a man that had given his life, not just himself, but for his fellow man? And I was angry. And there's a whole lot of other people were angry that he was that nonviolent, but he had to die that violent.
Well, I said this about Dr. King. He had a good thing, good deal. I thought the whole world and a lot of it. And I hated that they stopped him like they did. And I just said I was just going to stick to a good deal of his problems. Now, he said it over and often that he would like to see the times that come when the children, black church children, sit down and play and eat together and do around. And I tried to carry that program out. And I'm still going to try to carry it out.
And when King came to Washington, King would not come to the grassroots part of Washington, say like a place like Anacostia, you know. He came out and talked to some white folks at St. Elizabeth, you know. I think is the name of the church, St. Elizabeth. He came and he stayed 2 hours, talked to these, you know, middle-class people about financing this program and left.
So in losing Dr. King, we lost a symbol and we lost substance. We lost a man that had taken us from black men with enlightened minds and tingling spinal cords to a new people who had the power to stand up in front of white people. I developed the power to confront dogs, to confront sheriffs, to confront jails, to confront death. All of this marrow in our bone came from Dr. King's leadership.
His personality and his image was that of a giant, somewhere between a giant and God. So that among the black nationalist camp, among the other black extremists like the Black Panthers or SNCC, or some people who would resort to violent measures, that the very existence of Dr. King held these people in check. It was to see whether or not he would come of age, whether or not he would join forces with us, ultimately, because we felt that he was sincere, and that as soon as it was shown to him that nonviolence was not practical, that he would change his stand, as he did in the Vietnam War.
For black folks, it has been a year marked both by increasing pressures and a growing sense of community. It was the year of Resurrection City and Richard Nixon, of the death of Robert Kennedy, and of the Kerner Report on white racism. There was school decentralization, the Olympic boycott, and the black psychological revolution. In 1968, we saw the eclipse of many older figures in the movement by the rise to the forefront of such younger leaders as Julian Bond and Huey P. Newton. As Black Journal crisscrossed the country, getting the views of Afro-Americans on these and other subjects, one fact became increasingly clear. To most of us, the single event that dwarfed all others in significance was the cold-blooded murder of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
The effect that I'm most aware of in the assassination of Dr. King was in the final and total rejection on the part of the establishment of black people approaching the establishment on its own terms. And it was proven and made very clear to all black people that this is something that would not work, that the rewards of Dr. King's very gracious and noble and Western, white, Christian approach to solving black people's problems was rejected finally.
The only individual who had stature enough and who was a recognized leader of the integration civil rights movement was Dr. King. When Dr. King, the growing experience, the reality of the under which black people were living had been shown clearly through the experiences of SCLC, that the effort at demonstrating and petitioning the white power structure had not succeeded in bringing about basic change in this country. So that when Dr. King was assassinated, it seemed to me that one of the most obscene things that was possible to happen did happen. That is, the same people who'd been calling Dr. King Martin Luther Coon all these years, on the night of his death, were embracing him. Were embracing his philosophy. Were saying that he represented them, and it's too bad he's gone, and we must carry on in the tradition that he exemplified. All they were concerned about was preserving their system. And the real nature of their concern was proven when the Poor People's Campaign marshaled its forces and came to Washington, because the same people who a month previous had said that there are democratic processes by which change can be effected in the country, and what you need is to be nonviolent and to maintain the nonviolent tradition and come with your hat in your hand and beg white power structure to do the right thing. The response of the white power structure to that effort was guns and police and the destruction of the Poor People's Campaign.
The Poor People's Campaign, that was supposed to have been a landmark. It was supposed to have been a very important opportunity.
I never thought so. I felt that like Darren Watts, I was never a supporter of Dr. King's, and such marches, it seemed to me, where you were going to appeal to a Congress which wouldn't even pass a rat bill. No, I couldn't, I didn't believe in it when it was first projected. And its failure proves to me that the United States, the white community in the United States is not ready to give away anything. Whatever we get, we have to take.
Are you suggesting that the Poor People's Campaign had no impact whatsoever on the Congress?
Oh, it was a cruel hoax. All it basically did was to confirm to white America that they had been taking care of business. I mean, this is all it really was. to go tell the white establishment that that they have been persecuting us. They know damn well what they've been doing all these years. So all we did really was to sort of run a kind of a survey to point out to them how effective they have been. And I think the time is long past for these kind of real game playing.
Well, I think the most important event of 1968 was the Poor People's Campaign, specifically Resurrection City. The Poor People's Campaign forced America to make poverty an acceptable living reality in this country.
Well, I looked upon it as a lobbying technique also, more importantly perhaps than anything else. And I thought it was one of the good ideas to come from Dr. King, because here you had masses of people, not just an individual or personality, that simply, although no disrespect to the Vice President-elect of the United States, Spiro Agnew, who said, if you've seen one ghetto, you've seen them all. Dr. King had representatives from the ghettos throughout the United States, nationalities, creed, colors, religions, etc., and took all of these people to Washington and put up what I would like to call a prototype ghetto. Now, this could have saved the taxpayers a lot of money. You didn't have to send the congressman running all over the United States to look at ghettos. Just like old Agnew. You just send them down to Resurrection City. And if you've seen this one ghetto, truly you would have seen most of the ghettos of the United States. And I think to that extent, I consider it successful, although most people said it was a failure because of the things that happened in Resurrection City. But muddy streets in Resurrection City was typical of muddy streets and ghettos throughout the United States. Cops coming in and tear gassing people in the night who were asleep. Some of this happens in the ghetto. People being beaten and robbed. Some of this happens in the ghetto. People who did not have 3 good meals a day. This happens in the ghetto. People who were idle. This happens in the ghetto. Virtually everything that went on in Resurrection City went on in the ghettos of the United States of America. And if Congress had just simply not turned its back and had not ignored Resurrection City, much good could have come out of it.
Of course, we had the assassination of Martin Luther King. We had the failure, I call it a failure, I didn't agree with it in the beginning of Resurrection City, the Mule Train March on Washington, Poor People's March. These things prove that black people had to develop a new way of thinking, a way of thinking that I've always believed in, which is that it's really money and power.
I think that in depth what the significance of Resurrection City was to the black people in America today was that, look, the dream is gone. You see, Dr. King had a certain air about him, a certain mystical air, that people for years believed that all they'd have to do is follow him down the street peacefully, and somehow we were going to get rights, in a magical fashion. And I think that once he was no longer there, and the people could see what was happening in a detached fashion, that is detached from King, even though you couldn't say it was completely detached because his spirit was still there, but the man was no longer there. His charisma was no longer there. He was no longer able to hoodwink people with outstanding oratory. They had to look at the facts, and everybody, I think for the first time since beginning to follow Dr. King, realized that the whole era was over.
I think the era was over in 1963 at that picnic called the March on Washington.
I question how much hold Dr. King did have on the people. I think he was very largely supported by whites, because one must ask the question, where were all of the black people during all of Dr. King's operations? One would have thought that after his death, there would have been many, many millions of people marching to Washington to beg Congress for some respite from oppression. But no, they took to the streets for many reasons immediately after his death. And I think the main reason was because even those of us who disagreed with Dr. King felt that symbolically we had been shot too.
We are underestimating the significance of the poverty program, the march, which Martin Luther King was slated to lead immediately prior to his assassination. This represented a new dimension which was being added to the whole campaign led by Martin Luther King. Moreover, I don't agree that, while I don't agree with all of his philosophy, still, to me, it is clear that Dr. King moved more Afro-Americans to challenge against their or any other figure in this period. And at that moment, he was about to add millions of poor Euro-American people, which represented the kind of challenge to the power structure which they couldn't take. And so he had to be removed and was removed because that movement was becoming a mass movement, including Euro-Americans and Afro-Americans, which actually would put the axe at the root of the system dominated by the power
structure. Mr. Moeller, for the sake of discussion, assume that what you've said is true. What has happened to this movement? I mean, was it all in the, in the mind of Reverend King, or was it a genuine people's movement that the only thing it lacked was some direction? What I'm trying to get at, was it once again the kind of, where we depend always upon the one man to move history, or was it a genuine people's movement? What has happened to the movement?
Unquestionably, the movement was set back. And precisely because the assassination of King was calculated to set it back, smite the shepherd and scatter the sheep.
In fact, demonstrations, as we see them, are propaganda tool for mobilizing power. Now, we did the propaganda thing. We failed to mobilize sufficient power. But you don't knock out. I mean, we jumped the United States government. Russia's scared to do that. China doesn't have the forces to do that yet. So the very fact that some poor black people would dare to come there and confront this military-industrial complex and say, you've got to start pouring some money into us instead of into Vietnams and places like this, was in itself significant. Now, I think we face the task of continuing that national mobilization, of which I think all of the black consciousness at every level in the society is an important part. And that these next years, I see us mobilizing the power within our communities and the allies we can mobilize outside of the communities to bring about the changes asked for in the Poor People's Campaign.
How about the pouring of funds? Excuse me, Kathleen, you mentioned pouring funds. The poor people, then you got poverty programs. And you start pouring money into something. I mean, are these poverty programs, have they been of any worth to black people, or are they just...
Let's deal with something more relevant than poverty programs. I'd like to talk about also this effect of the assassination. Poverty programs are a tool of the government for doing something they want done. They don't have anything to do with the lives of black people, and that's been recognized.
There's an old African proverb: before we can cure the disease, we must first diagnose it, and the disease is racism. Poverty is just one aspect of racism. Dr. King was not poor. He was killed. Muhammad Ali was not poor. He was deposed. Adam Clayton Powell was not poor. Nigger is not an economic condition. It's not an economic identity. It's a racial identity. Racism is our problem. Poverty is simply one aspect of it.
2 days after Dr. King was assassinated in Birmingham, Bobby Hutton was murdered in Oakland. Eldridge Cleaver was wounded in a battle with the Oakland police. And while much has been made of Dr. King's assassination, the information concerning Bobby Hutton's assassination, who was the first person to join the Black Panther Party, has been suppressed. But this is where it's at in terms of the young black people moving. You see the response to Dr. King's assassination was not something that he himself would have advocated. But this is the move that the young black people would make. It was spontaneous, but it was not what you call nonviolent. It was not a passive response. And people all over the country turned to another form of leadership. And I think that the leadership represented by the Black Panther Party is the only viable leadership that will get something done left to black people.
Laura,
I'm not saying the Black Panther Party leadership per se. I'm talking about
the types of things that they
political,
advocate, politically, economically,
ideological, and revolutionary leadership. One of our basic premises is that political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. And this has been taken up by the young warriors, the young men in the community across the colony, across this country. And I think everyone has to recognize that whatever changes are going to be made in this country for black people in the coming years are going to be made by young people. And the young people in this country are responding to the Black Panther Party. It's growing vastly all across this country. This is a force that's going to have to be dealt with.
So no sooner the sun went down, the officials came through the black community shooting. So we had no other alternative but to pick up what we had and fire back. And after doing all of that, now I think Prattville is one of the best towns in Alabama. You can go through it. Go and play Prattville if you want to without any trouble.
I never heard of a sit-in revolution. The only type of revolutions I've known about or read about have been bloody revolutions. Examples of the Russian Revolution, the Revolutionary War, where one man said, "Give me liberty," or "Give me death."
Violence has a way of being very healthy and functional for the development of the society. By that I mean it's frequently in times of the peak violence where the society can take that next major important step, like Cleveland. Black people now must patrol their communities.
I think black people are as sympathetic to the nonviolent approach as they have been before. They've become much more impatient. But as far as their sympathy and their concern for nonviolence, by nature, black people are nonviolent. Just like by nature, white people are violent, because this is something, as an instrument, they have used through centuries to bring about change, but black people have done just the opposite.
We're still going to have to participate to some degree in the electoral process, because you can't tell people that the electoral process is fraudulent if they haven't, say, participated in that to some degree. So that we see ourselves waging more or less two battles. We see ourselves waging a battle in the streets. We see ourselves waging a battle through the electoral process, you know, in order to very neatly sharpen the contradictions in society.
Well, we're in a position now, whereas we have a lot on the white man, we're in a position where we can hurt him, and we're going to hurt him. We have to. And I think more so he realizes that we can hurt him. And this is scaring him half to death, which is another good thing. And I think it's time to fight. Whatever you believe in, it's just time to fight.
My definition of black power, or any kind of power in terms of regulating or controlling one's own destiny, or the destiny of a community of people, or a nation of people, or the world, is the ability to kill. The ability to kill.
I have some difficulty, however, in shifting totally to the philosophy that the answer is in the barrel of a gun. That gives me great difficulty. I would say this, that if we reach the point at which Patrick Henry and George Washington and our other national heroes apparently reached, that there is no other answer except force and violence, then there may be an answer here which has to be looked at by anybody who is not a religious pacifist. And there are many people who are pacifists. I would not characterize the nonviolent approach as a cowardly approach or a subservient approach. I think it requires great courage to do the kinds of things that Dr. King did and the people who worked with him. It seems to me, however, that there is a change in strategy that is called for by the events of 1968. And I don't believe it necessarily calls for the, at least at this point, maybe I'll come to it later, but I am not at the point where I believe it calls for guns and ammunition. I think what it calls for is the mobilization of the power that is present in the black community. And I'm thinking particularly about political power, as you suggest. And I'm thinking about economic power. I'm thinking about psychological power. And I'm thinking about black pride. And I'm thinking about coalitions and the development and strengthening of allies and alliances. And I'm not quite ready to give up completely the possibility of any solution other than going out into the streets and becoming a part of a violent struggle.
Well, do you feel that just because the statements made that political power is out of a barrel of a gun, that this means necessarily streets?
One thing I'd like to say about this whole question of violence that's been bandied around, very clear, should be made very clear that in the Black Panther Party and among all black people, it's not a question of violence, aggressive violence. This is what people mostly think of. It's a question of defending ourselves and our people against the violence that's being waged upon us and has been waged upon us for the past 400 years. A war of aggression is going on against black people, not only on the level of guns, but on the level of housing, on the level of education, on the level of food, on every level of the society. There's aggression, there's hostility, suppression, and violence directed against black people. The program of the Black Panther Party, originally started as the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, is to move to defend and protect black people against this violence so that we can move to organize black people into a sufficient power to obtain our needs. One thing, back to what we were talking about earlier, about the assassination of Dr. King, I think it should be viewed in its context. It's very clear to me that this was something that was planned. You take the month of April. On April 1st, President Johnson announced that he wasn't going to run again for office. And this was a profound shock that went around the whole world. Everyone was sort of caught off balance. On April 4th, Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, another shock. People were juggled around. They didn't know exactly what was going on. On April 6th, there's an eruption in Oakland, which is the hottest spot in terms of the black movement, in which the Minister of Information, Eldridge Cleaver, was almost assassinated.
I do think that the black man, within a very few years, will build up his own political party. The politics of this world is made by the white man. You don't have any yourself. The white man makes all his politics. Then he teaches our people those laws or politics in which he has planned and devised himself. And there is so much crookedness in the white man's politics that you cannot win with his politics.
The question is, are we not in the American economy more and more an obsolete people? They do not need our labor anymore. The fact of the matter is they don't need the labor of most white people, but the message hasn't reached them yet. It ought to have reached us because we are more and more unemployed. And aren't we really talking about, isn't the basic question that faces us is, that faces the nation, the whites, the basic question is, what do you do with the people that you don't need anymore? I know what they've done with them throughout history. And that's one question. And then the second question for the black people or those who are attempting to map out strategy of struggle is, do you continue to work within the system that has neglected you and oppressed you and repressed you for 300 years? Or do you attempt to change that system? And by change, I mean eliminate it, overthrow it. What do you do? I mean, this is a question I would throw out.
Well, it seems to me that we have to do both things. We have to work
within it and then
within the framework of the
overthrow
system, and we have to work for its complete change, its basic change.
It seems like a contradiction to me, Mr. Moore, because one of the first lines of defense of any system is to perpetuate itself. And it certainly is not going to allow us to, quote, infiltrate it and then, presumably get into a position where we can weaken it. I think that Julian has probably hit on the crux of the matter. Basically, that approximately 25 million Americans of African descent are obsolete in terms of the demands of technology of this
But
country.
I think you are looking at this question not from the viewpoint of the Afro-American, but from the viewpoint of the European-American system of oppression. When you say, what do we do with people who are no longer employable or who are obsolete? It isn't a question of what do we do with them. It's a question of what we will do with ourselves.
That's what we're talking about.
Just a minute.
No, wait a minute.
We agree, Mr. Moore, on that.
And what we will do with ourselves involves this organization to get as much power as we can, and to get the means of changing this.
But Mr. Moore, all I am asking is that we be clear about this. I think there is a contradiction. You can't talk about getting as much power as you can by working within a legislature. There's, let's say, any state, any of the 50 states. How much energy do we have? How much unity do we have? Look at the unity that is demonstrated around this table here. We don't have enough power to do all of these things at once. And it seems to me that there is such a basic contradiction that we ought to address ourselves to it. Working within the system, it seems to me to mean that you're going to waste years and years and generations, because those who are the most articulate will get better jobs and whatnot. They move out of contact with the community. Another hot young men come along, and the same process follows. And what we're talking about really
by
is...
offers of prizes from the establishment. Now, you see, when you talk about economics and economic power, we could never work within the system and at the same time overthrow the system economically or politically, because like when you refer to places like in Africa, like Mozambique, Angola, South Africa, where there's still colonialism going on, you take a giant, a financial giant like Chase Manhattan, they can do what they want in South Africa. In this country,
and then
blacks
offer you scholarships.
Yeah, that's right.
At the same time.
And the Ford Foundation can do the same thing. They buy out the whole revolution every time blacks get ready to talk about a revolution. Now, if blacks had the power, you'd like to say what we can do economically is start a fund whereby we could help all those people in Africa. Now, we could do this, providing we had the gigantic financial strength of the Chase Manhattan Bank, whereby we could say, look, Chase Manhattan Bank, you pull out of South Africa, or else we're going to have like 10 gigantic corporations stop doing business with you in the United States. But we can't do that. They can laugh and say, yeah, well, look, let's give some more money through the Ford Foundation to the Black Revolution here, and we can keep on doing whatever we want.
Again,
and so they still have their hands on everything.
And
first of all,
overestimating.
You'd have to get an economic base here in this country
Mr.
before
Moore,
you could do that,
isn't it
right?
a fact that without the existence of the United States as it is today, there would be no white South African regime. Most of the reactionary governments, regimes around the world are supported by the United States, so that we could send as much money as we wanted to the freedom fighters in a place like Portugal, the poorest country in Europe, which controls a territory 36 times its size. How could Portugal continue to do this without the support of the United States government? What the statement I'm trying to make is this, that none of those countries will achieve freedom until this system here in the United States is overthrown, until it is changed.
I don't agree, because your whole position sums up to an overestimation of the power of the people who now dominate and control the United States. I grant that it's considerable. It's massive. It's massive. But when you magnify it, as you do, then you remove all possibility of doing anything. And I'm not for doing nothing.
Well, you think it's
just a minute, gentlemen. I am for beginning where we are, and we certainly are within this system. So that begin to do anything about it means that we begin within it.
Suggesting now we should infiltrate the power structure and somehow or the other get our claws on it.
I'm not talking about infiltrating the power structure. Again, you are dominated by the power structure. I am saying that we should organize to fight against the power structure.
But you're saying join the power structure in order to organize
No,
against
I'm not
it.
saying that at all. Not at all.
No, that's not really what's happening.
Not
What's
at all.
actually happening is that the power structure is joining the minorities, the disenfranchised minority, to help fight themselves, you know? Like, this is one of the most beautiful gimmicks
You're
that's
under an illusion,
inconceivable.
my friend.
No, that's what are you talking about?
The power.
Look around you. The government, the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation,
Sponsoring most
everybody's
of the
sponsoring the
revolutions
Black
today.
Revolution.
They are not sponsoring any Black revolution.
Do you deny, Mr. Moore, do you deny that one of the basic tenets of any revolution is that once the class, any class, regardless of how low they've been, once they assume power, they become the leading class?
They
in
want
that
you
society,
to think that there is or has been a Black revolution, so that they can continue to maintain power. And they are seeking, of course, to buy off those that they can. But it is my judgment, since I believe in man, that they will not succeed altogether, and that there will be a remnant, a force that has not bowed the knee to Baal, and will lead the people in a revolutionary struggle to change this entire system.
There's been a remnant of Christianity in the Western world for the past 2,000 years, and it hasn't changed the thing.
And if you think this is mythical, I tell you that great movements have always been motivated by some powerful myth.
You seem to be waiting for the coming of a new Christ.
Yes.
No.
No.
May I just
You can call it that if you wish.
May I just inject a thought here? With all of this discussion.
You're Mr. Greaves, aren't you?
Yes, I seem to have come
Come
back
to the top of the mountain with us, sir, and look into the promised land.
Exactly.
Nothing like it.
That didn't work.
I was wondering whether or not all of you were talking of variations on the theme of revolution, and I was wondering how would this impulse toward separatism fit in with this revolutionary quest? Because it seems to me that one seems to be excluding the other, or does it?
I'd like to make a comment about what Mr. Allen just said about nonviolence. He said it's not. We have never taken any position that nonviolence was either cowardly or, what was that other thing?
Subservient.
Subservient. That's not even the issue. What is the issue is, does it work? Nonviolence is a very non-functional approach in a society that's based entirely on organized force and violence. A country was created in violence, land was taken in violence, society that's perpetuating itself through violence in the ghettos, in Vietnam, in Africa, wherever you look. There's organized force and violence at work to maintain the society. So whether the solution is organized force and violence is a secondary question. The question is, what is the problem? And the problem is organized force and violence. And one of the things that's very clear about the philosophy of the Black Panther Party and Huey P. Newton is the statement that there's a world of difference between 20 million unarmed people and 20 million people organized and armed to the gills. That's power right there.
That's your First Amendment.
But
That's power.
Let me get back to nonviolence. So,
That's their First Amendment.
I think,
Yeah. You know, the only thing I want to say, I don't like to reduce a thing to either or, because with black people, it's a question of both and not either bullets or ballots. You know, it's a wise use of whatever is necessary.
By any means necessary.
Yeah, you see the opposition you're up against. You know, that's the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Sheriff, the FBI, the CIA. So when you're looking at total opposition,
that's what we're
and
up
I think
against.
and I think that in each instance when black people have to get themselves together, and you have to work out your kind of program and see in which direction you're going to move. If the time comes when politics is a thing that can help you advance your cause, then black people should get to the ballot, and they should use the ballot box, you know, and put black people in position, and then they should use the power. I say when that occasion arises.
Well, wait a minute. Black people used the ballot box in untold numbers in 1968, and Nixon sitting in the White House.
What we've got to say, though, is that there's no one solution. There's no, I mean,
I'm not saying there's no one solution. I'm saying there's some things that are non-functional.
You had a 40, 50-year violent struggle in China. You had, I mean, there's no one quick quick answer. Now, I think part of what I feel here is that we really haven't understood the nature of our plight yet.
I think some people haven't.
No, that what is the power based on? See, I think the reason we centered in the South is this whole big military-industrial complex you talk about is the enemy. And that is resting on the power of about a half a dozen Southern senators and congressmen that virtually control your committees in the Congress. And you don't break that power by shooting a cop. So you break that power at its source with Richard Russell, Talmadge, Eastland, Stennis, Mendel Rivers in South Carolina, the Byrds. Those are the people that keep the lid on, that control the military contracts, see, that spend 2/3 of our federal budget on oppression around the world. Now, if violence is the tool, then it ought to be directed in the direction of the enemy. Now, the poor cop on the beat is just another tool. Now, one more thing. Even the poverty programs, see, North and South are quite different. And that's why I think we've got to look carefully at them. In Mississippi, the Child Development Group, that was survival for those black people. They took the poverty program in their own hands, and they developed a network that really helped them to survive in the most vicious system of racism.
But then the funds were taken away.
But they got them back.
Right, but they weren't in control, not really.
No, they're in control now, and they're in control in Alabama. I'm saying there's never going to be a time when you're totally in control.
Why
Life
not?
is a constant struggle.
I don't see why black people can't be totally in control of their destiny.
Oh, only if you struggle and fight for it.
Well, that's what it's all about.
But you got to fight with your head as well as with your fist or with your gun.
Well, maybe, I think that all wars involve fighting on every level.
That's
you see,
right.
Politics is warfare without bloodshed, and warfare is politics with bloodshed.
Yeah.
Including white people.
I'm quoting Huey Newton and Mao Zedong and Ho Chi Minh.
Well, let's put it this way. If that's the case, then if we're
in
looking...
the English language.
If we're looking at the...
One more thing.
All right, well, go ahead.
I would say that when we begin to organize and educate our people so that we say to this military-industrial establishment that, all right, your economy is based on steel, automobile industry is the biggest consumer of steel, we're going to hit you at the heart of the economy, and come 1970, no 1970 car rolls in the ghetto. And then you will be, then that's the kind of power that they can't counteract simply by beating up a few people or assassinating a few people or putting them in jail.
Dr. Young, what you're saying is that you don't have a single weapon, but you're constantly on the lookout for leverage. And wherever you find it, you have to use it.
It seems to me that there ought to be possible to identify a number of areas in which the self-interest, the very self-interest of this general society, dictates not continued suppression and not continued exploitation of a black minority, but rather opening this society up so that people do begin to have some of the opportunities that they're supposed to have. It seems to me that a wise administrator, somebody who's concerned about the survival of the nation, is going to move in certain directions to avoid the kind of armed confrontation, which is very clearly a possibility and has even erupted in some places. In progress, put it that way. What I would think it would be wise for minority leadership to do would be to seek out and to interpret and to press those points in which there is a common self-interest. Economics, political, housing, things of this sort. Now, I'd like to have her react to that.
All right. First of all, this was the policy of Dr. Martin Luther King. He asked these people to move in their own self-interest. They refused. And secondly, what you're asking is something that's human. And I don't think it's possible for this establishment to react to a human problem in a human way. It's impossible. In terms of self-interest.
You think it's that inhuman?
It is. It's obviously that inhuman to me. If you look at its history and what it's doing now, if that is human, then we're something else. So I have to assume that they're non-human. In terms of self-interest, it's a question of whose self-interest. There are masses and masses and masses of white people who would agree with you on that point. But these white people do not have any power. They do not have any say. They do not have any control. And the self-interests of the people who are in charge are not those of human beings. They're mainly based on money and power. You see, if these people would move in their self-interest, they wouldn't beat their own children in Chicago and crack their heads. If they moved in their self-interest, they wouldn't send their armed police onto their own college campuses where their own children are studying. They wouldn't do that. So in terms of their own people, they don't move in their own self-interest. So we can be assured that in terms of black people, they will not move in their self-interest. What is important is for black people to move in black people's self-interest and let them do whatever they want to do.
The grassroots white man has already taken his step. You know, you see those little American flags on those little cars, all those little Birchite policemen, you know. And in Newark, when the police went on a strike, they had a curfew in a black city where we couldn't come out the house after 12 o'clock because the police, many of whom don't even live in the city, went on strike. What I'm saying is on a local level, the repression is going to go even, you know, more violently to the right. And now at the national level, they'll be able to justify it, you know, hipper. And I think as America, you know, like stumbles to the conclusion that it is, you know, weak and about to be taken off by all the people in the world, that the more and more violent repressions will come. And the next Wallace that comes around, the next time, he will be much slicker, much hipper. He will have the benefit of a psychedelic, you know, hippie-oriented speechwriter, you understand? Yeah. With a much slicker publicity thing than old corn pone chewing George Wallace got. Yeah. You know, by the time he will be right in here.
Leroy, we actually could have that in President Nixon.
I also hear, I was going to add one thing, if I may, because I heard something else in there which maybe self-interest, but it may be possible that black people are suicidal, and if so, can this country afford...
No, I don't. Black people are definitely not suicidal.
Let me finish. If I'm asking the question, if black people have a tendency to be suicidal, or if the opposition, the enemy, is homicidal, then can they afford for black people to even get in the position that they might destroy this country?
Well, first of all, I say black people are already in that position. And secondly, black people are not suicidal at all. They're beautiful people interested in surviving and living. You know that. Black people want to live.
It's a very interesting problem that we faced here in Black Journal. We try to get varying opinions on the show from time to time, and we found that it's very, very difficult to find black people who will come and sit in front of a television camera and take a point of view which is considerably moderate or conservative or reactionary. Would you, how do you explain this phenomenon that is what seems to be, to my mind, sort of the death of the public Uncle Tom, I'm thinking of in particular? I mean, that individual who we all know has been a very important member of the black community for a number of years, who somehow or other he's no longer available to us. And I'm thinking not only the public Uncle Tom, but also even moderates. I find it's very difficult to get on this show.
I think
people
he's changed
with moderate
his style.
views.
He's become the contemporary race hustler. You know, like years ago, he used to be the guy who went to the whites and said, look, I can get this for you, and I can, you know, keep the black brother cool in the black community for you. Well, today, what he is like he's a guy in a, you know, cool suit. He hasn't got his hat in his hand, and the people downtown, they understand that we've got to keep this, we've got to let this man maintain a militant stance, you know, if he's going to be of use to us. And so he's out there hollering louder than everybody, black power and down with Whitey and yeah, kill him. And the dough keeps running in. You see, but his game is still the same. It's just the way of putting it over. That's
yeah, but I think at the same time, Claude, that there's been a kind of death of this public figure, as you call the Uncle Tom, without now attempting or even suggesting that the NAACP represents the ultimate in Uncle Tomism. But you notice the NAACP has just changed its public posture vis-a-vis the whole question of criticizing other Afro-Americans or other Negroes or other colored people. And I think even a moderate organization like the NAACP is beginning to feel the weight. And I think that, of course, they're doing what I consider, you know, they're committing suicide. I think their policy in the past of not criticizing other blacks was a commendable one, despite their own public posture. But I think that they are now, that they have been taking Whitey's money for all these years, and now Whitey's calling the chits in and says,
Yeah,
look.
well, Dan, now that you point out that the NAACP has been one of the largest Uncle Tom organizations traditionally. Oh, you didn't? Well, forgive me. But anyway.
It's not that I didn't say it. I was just in the context of we were talking about public Uncle Toms, and, and NAACP came to mind. But
are you saying that you wouldn't say it? Or that you
no, I
just
said that when he mentioned, when Bill mentioned public Uncle Tom, the name NAACP came to mind. Yeah, without even wanting to call him that, it just automatic reflex.
Yeah, would you not say that they did at one time perform some useful function? I don't know. I'm asking
the NAACP. Yeah, I'm certain many people did at one time, or probably.
I think the NAACP, particularly back in the very early years when you had the kind of mob rule, particularly in the southern regions of the country, they were the only voice, or the only ones who were able to provide any kind of legal approach to the problem. Well, I think that they've just outlived their usefulness as they're now structured, as they were structured then. I don't think they have changed visibly.
But the people who have convictions are not in power.
Right here. I'm sorry we have to cut this off at this point, although I know that in the future, all that we didn't get on the program on Black Journal tonight, we'll have on in future programs. So you'll be watching. So we'll have little excerpts in there to see us as we move along here.
Isn't Black Journal an accomplishment of '68?
I think Black Journal would be an accomplishment of 1968 after we.
And 1969.
1969 till March. But you want to be watching Black Journal. Our next Black Journal will be on Monday, January the 27th, and as you look, you will probably once again see some of our guests as we disperse them through the program, rapping about some of the things we talked about that we couldn't get on tonight. I'm Lou House with William Greaves here on Black Journal. And so, brothers and sisters, until Monday, January 27th, I'll be with you then. Juan Gay Segay.
All right. That turned into a pretty good discussion in that second half of the documentary. That was a pretty good discussion. Highly Favored was here earlier. She said this is a serious conversation they had. Thanks for sharing. I hope other folks got that as well. Now, I dropped the link for anyone who wants to come up and discuss anything. We didn't have a huge crowd today. We never get huge crowds anyway, but we didn't have a really large crowd. We didn't have a lot of chat going on in the chat. But, I dropped the link. I'm going to hang around for another minute. If no one comes on, that's fine. But I've been dropping some quotes in the chat throughout, and it's things that is other things that MLK has said that the power structure doesn't push out to us, right? They keep pushing this "I have a dream," this integrationist speech to us, but they don't talk about some of the other things MLK has said. I'm just going to read a couple that I put up. MLK once said, "Faith is taking the first step, even when you can't see the whole staircase." And that's a very interesting quote, and something I hope more of our folks, more of you folks in particular, who listen to these shows on KWAZ radio, I hope you guys will take that. I always talk about it. Black folks require too much buy-in. You have to convince Black folks to accept or to do something that is of interest to Black folks. Black folks require too much buy-in. Sometimes you ain't gonna see the whole picture, but if you understand the people in charge, the folks who are bringing the ideas forward, the folks who are doing the work, just go ahead and help them out. Feel me? Just go ahead and help them out. Another quote that he said, a man who won't die for something is not fit to live. And I put that charge to all of you out there. Are you willing to die for your future generations? Forget about me, right? Forget about me. Forget about anyone else. Are you willing to die for your children, your grandchildren, and the great-great-grandchildren that are to come, or grandnieces and nephews? Because if you aren't, then there's a question of why should you live anyway, right? Let me pause those quotes and welcome in Real Black Gentleman. Real Black Gentleman, how are you today?
I'm straight, relaxing,
good,
enjoying my day.
Today was a good day to relax. What did you think of the documentary?
Well, I was kind of in and out most of it. I didn't really pay attention to too much. I just think that a lot of times I think Martin Luther King Jr. gets, he's a complex person, and it's always like his life was like net good. I mean, it was always a net good. I can't find the small indiscretions in his life and like poke at him. Like that's the thing. It's like he did so much. He was like the tip of the spear, but in the form of just like that orator. You know what I'm saying? He was just calling it what it was. I mean, people forget. A lot of people hated King in his day. Like there's a whole black woman who ran up and stabbed him in the church in the service, and I don't know what year it was, but this was like a couple years, you know what I'm saying, before he died. I don't know if it was in the 50s or whatnot, but he got stabbed. He got a whole attack during his own service. Like he gave a lot of support to the brothers down south who were fighting. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot of times people heard what he was saying and what he was doing, and they kind of thought that he was just too much of a rabble rouser. They didn't want him to talk about anything. They were really, really comfortable. Like they were okay with him talking about, integrating and stuff. But when it actually came down to like, you know what I'm saying, look after black people and like really like being an advocate, people wasn't on that type of time back then. And I'll say this, it's like when people love to water down Martin Luther King, like they'll even calling it, again, this is like even calling it MLK Day is like, when Malcolm said if you pour a little bit of milk and coffee, you know what I'm saying, instead of what will make you up, put you to sleep. It's like when people refer to the dream speech, and people don't want to say Martin Luther King Jr. They'd say MLK. And what does MLK look like? It's like milk. It's how you integrate. People use Martin Luther King, they kill him, and then they try to like say that they're on his team the whole side or the whole time, man. It's like that's what it's all about. It's like Martin Luther King is such, you know what I'm saying? People like to compare Martin and Malcolm, like, well, Malcolm was hard and Martin was soft. In a lot of ways, I would see that, you could argue maybe, you know what I'm saying, Malcolm was he was timid in his like deference to the Nation of Islam, whereas Martin was kind of going at the system, material. You know what I'm saying? It's like Martin Luther King, God grace him, man. Like he's one of those people that the more you learn about him, the more either you'll hate him, unfortunately, or you'll just like, man, like he was on our team the whole time. Like, man, why do we I just, you know what I'm saying? It's like everything he tried to do, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? The whole burning house. Like he was really trying to like make sure that America, he was really trying to make sure and speak to this country to be like, Black people have to be recognized. We have to be recognized. We have to be recognized. And in doing so, he, tagged on to a lot of the, you know what I'm saying, the narratives of trying to, board versus board education, how, you know what I'm saying, that whole culminated into his whole, I have a dream, but he really just wanted to make sure that like Black people weren't getting attacked in the streets, that we weren't getting, you know, the whole second classes. If he could do it without integrating, I'm sure he would. That's why he was saying, "Oh man, I integrated my people." Like, shoot, like why'd I do that? Like, my bad, my bad, my bad. And it's like that's the whole thing. Like, the more you learn about King, the more you realize, like, even though he made mistakes, you know, it's like, yeah, it's critical. You shouldn't have like got into the, you know what I'm saying? Like, we shouldn't have gone so hard in the paint for integration. Like, yeah, but it was like, you know, he really was that guy. And it's like we haven't him like knocking out, you know, it's hard to say Martin was better than Malcolm, because again, they had met together. This is black people in the act of organizing and getting together. And it's just, once those two fell, they knew that there was a vacuum. Then you go after Fred Hampton, it's the vacuum of black, you know, vanguard, like out there up front. And it's just once that's there, then you have the 70s. It's just like it gets stupid. It gets stupid in Black America. It's like we're constantly trying, but it's just like everything's gone. I mean, the wars going on in the beginning of the 70s. It's just it's terrible, and we still have not come back from that.
Real Black Gentleman, what's one of your favorite quotables, I guess, from MLK? Is there anything that really stands out to you?
They'll feel the pain when he's talking about it's time. You know what I'm saying? It's time for, you know what I'm saying, when he's talking about we need a bank and we need to redirect the pain. That's the one that gets me when he says that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Speech where it's like, yeah.
This quote here I like a lot, actually. The quote on the screen right now. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. And that's the thing. You see, my issue with black folks like to mirror what white folks are on. And so the MLK that black folks talk about is a passive MLK. It's nonviolence. It's this type of, you know, integration, is this type of thing. But MLK drops some gems on you like, listen, you need to be putting in some work. And not just those with a college degree and all that stuff. I think I posted a quote about that earlier. It doesn't matter about your degrees and if you could use subject verbs properly. Find yourself around people who can, if that's what's called for, and help them do the work. But we have this thing, I hate to bring it up, but we have this thing where we just want to sit around and tear down shit, critique it to death. When someone comes forward with an idea, we want to tear it down, right? When someone comes forward with some work, we just want to be able to spectate and see what it looks like. No one wants to actually take the next step and actually get involved and help some. You know, we tend to take it. We ourselves as a group, we tend to take this passive approach of let's just sit back and wait and see what happens. But nothing good ever happens when you wait, when you sit back and wait. You have to define what it is you want to see and then go out there and go get it. And that's what I wish people would take from MLK. Regardless to what, at the end of the day, MLK went out there every day knowing that he had threats against his life, threats against his family, and he did the work. Was some of it maybe a little bit off key? Sure. But ultimately, he did the work and he paid a heavy price for it. Most people ain't willing to pay that price. Highly favored earlier when I asked the question, are you willing to die for your future generations, your children, your grandchildren, your great-great-great-grandchildren, your grandnephews and nieces? She said, yes, she is. That's rare. That's rare. And if it's sincere, it's rare because most people ain't really about that shit. Most people will run and leave their mama to die. You know? Athrazur is here. He's repeating what I say. He said you have to define what you want to see and go there and create it. Go there and create it. And if you can't figure out how to do it, go and join other people who have something going on. And be active and help and create. One of the things, I'm going to say it here today, one of the things I like about Shoot the Breeze that I do every Saturday night with a bunch of you guys, but one of the things I also dislike about, well, first, what I like is the fact that folks religiously come out together and commune and share their thoughts on different subject matter and stuff like that. But one of the things I don't like is that, again, to me, is the failing of consciousness. To me, is the failing of consciousness. Because we'll come together as conscious people discussing these ideas and trying to troubleshoot some thoughts and whatnot, but no one will volunteer. No one will really step up and say, hey, let me help you with that. And we're going to perish because folks ain't willing to say, let me help with that. Because there's no paycheck attached to liberation, folks won't say, let me help with that. And that is why, for the most part, why we are where we are. Real Black Jeremy, you have any thoughts on that?
A lot of that has to comes from a lot of just it's easy. It's you know that's complicated. There's a lot where people have been divided, and when someone in that division wants to pull together, you find yourself, you know what I'm saying, outnumbered, and it's difficult to bring together that natural process of what we have in common. How instead of like, you know, each of us paying our bills, we find ourselves in a situation where we're collectively paying the bill. These are things that, I mean, it's not impossible, but I mean, it's like when and there's always risk involved, but things you do have to like flesh out some of the details. That's just me. You do see people asking for money, and then you have hustlers who don't seem to pan out. And a lot of times that message overtakes why people aren't just naturally, you know what I'm saying, as if like we always do this. And there was once upon a time we did, and we have been systematic, and there's been a very, very, very successful way that they've been able to dismantle us. I feel like in trying to, when people try to once again say what we have to do, and you know what I'm saying, like how we get together, there is a resistance because, again, like, you know, what we're trying to do has to relate to what it is we're actually doing in our lives. You know what I'm saying? It's difficult to invest everything in something that you don't know isn't going to have an outcome. But at the same time, it can be just as difficult to invest a little bit in something when you might not think that, well, what's the point of me doing that anyways? Like that, even that little bit, there is something where a lot of times, you know what I'm saying, the vision has to be expressed. Like you do have to, you know, you have to give a vision that the people want to see. You have to people, and I mean, this is, again, we're divided, and sometimes it does take, you know, it's difficult to have this, everyone who hears the message just instantly just gravitates to support the message at any given time. Like a lot of this stuff has to be localized, although, you know what I'm saying, not everything is local. Sometimes things are beyond the local, you know what I'm saying. Some, you know, when we have to help other people and there's something just really new, you know, just something that is just not new but is sudden, where they're, you know what I'm saying, that people see it in its, you know, extreme, where people who see that are more likely to respond to that situation. Where if it's something forward, it's difficult to say, this is a new idea, let's just get on it right away, and people just see the value in just supporting that. I know I'm like drawing a long way. I know what you're trying to say as far as like people giving to a to black stuff, to black innovations, to black maintenance of our people and what we have to do. a lot of this, I mean, there's a lot that can be, I would say one of the first things is actually having a physical place, because outside of that, it becomes lost in idealistic concepts. Like, I mean, wanting to support something, it's good to see people already doing it. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like you want to have 2 or 3, you want to have a nucleus of people who are already there. And once you have that nucleus of like 2 or 3, then you might be able to get 20 or 30 around that. But it's difficult. It's like you have to advertise and sell it too.
Yeah, see that you hit a you. I figured that's where you were going to go with it, and that's exactly the issue that I'm having. There's some feedback coming from you, real black gentleman. Just mute your mic for me.
Okay.
That's the problem. I get what you're saying. Not everyone, because of their socialization, their education, etc., not everyone readily understands. Actually, that's a lie too. The people who we tend to say don't understand what's going on, they do. They do. I was saying this, I think it was Saturday Night Shoot the Breeze, that I stopped saying that the gangsters in the community are the warrior class. They're not. They are just like the boule. They are the violent boule, actually, right? They are a violent society within our society. The issue is we tend to think, at least I used to think, that, oh, they didn't really know better. They don't know what's what. So that's what. No, they know. You know how I know they know? When I look at one of the former gang leaders, Melvin Farmer, when I see him talk about how they only committed crimes within certain radius, they didn't cross certain streets because they knew that was a heftier charge. And that means, on some rudimentary level, that this reality is constructed a certain way that doesn't benefit us. And if you know that, then it doesn't take much for you to realize that we need to be working on changing our reality. You understand? And so this concept of the buy-in, where you have to advertise and sell to get everyone on board, I actually rebuke that now, because I think that our over-reliance on that concept, that you have to sell, you got to convince, you got to make them buy. I think our over-reliance on it is allowing people to skate. Is allowing our people to skate. Because people just feign ignorance. We allow our people to skate. Let me tell you, when these rappers, when I see them on these committees, and they're the face of these movements, like right now, reparations and all that old shit, I know our community is on some bullshit. First, to begin with, when you watch these guys and you watch what they were peddling in the community, the rot that they were peddling with their work in the community, and then you let that same guy, you let the Snoop Dogs, the T.I.s, whoever it is, you let that same guy, when his career is on the downside, you let him come in and become a voice of change. You all let Snoop Dogg sit up here and be able to say, well, see, Dolores Tucker was correct. Man, shut your ass up. She was correct back then, too. And you knew she was, but you was doing it for the bag. A part of you knew that her and Calvin Butts was right. You did it for the bag. And so what I'm trying to say is we got to get off of this notion that our people just don't know. And that brings me to another thing. As I see Buana Hagaziki says, good afternoon, guys. That brings me to another thing. How do I put this? This concept of certain people are further ahead of others in their consciousness, we got to throw that shit away too. Either you're conscious or you're unconscious. Which are you?
I can feel that. I can feel that. I can feel that.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Talk about it. Go ahead.
Again, it's like everyone didn't agree with King in his day. It's like we live in this society, right? In being black people, right? We're separated. We are inherently separated. We are separated by a lot of distances, by time, and by commitments. We are not in the same room with indefinite amount of time, and our resources are replenished under our own means. It's in the only barriers. I mean, we literally can't. There are things that we can do, but it's a case of if we go our natural one step forward, we wind up being back. I know what you're trying to say by like how would I say, trying to advertise it, but it's not instinctual for some people. It's like I don't. When we say do the right thing, you know, there's a lot of right things that need to be done. I got to make sure the water is on. We got to make sure that we have fresh water. We have to go make sure that there is that our food supply is okay, and we can, for the foreseeable future. There are so many other things. When you're hungry, and I don't mean by like, you know what I'm saying, like I don't even want to play hungry. I won't even say that. When you're frustrated, let's say, you don't think straight. If you're driving home, if you don't have, you know what I'm saying, if you just don't have the resources, you get upset. It's difficult to detox black people from all the things that distract us from what we need to do, and not do it. I don't want to. It's difficult because it's like you do need you got, how would I say it? I think that it's like there's going to be risk, and you have to manage the risks. And if you fail, at least there has to be an understanding of why you failed, so that the next person would go ahead and can learn from the failures. It's everything that black people are organizing to try to do is always on a conveyor belt. The people who are prominent, who you're talking about, who are entertainers, who we are not putting on these media platforms, who we as black people are not doing. They are black. I mean, you know, it's psychology is tricky. I mean, some people know right from wrong, but they don't know all the details. People don't know about how subliminal messaging works, but it's a real thing. And it's a lot of people who, you know, we you know what I'm saying? I don't want to feel like I'm compelled to do something that I cannot explain. You know what I'm saying? It's like I don't want to feel like I have to do something that the next person isn't. I don't want to be the next Martin Luther King. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to do that, but I want to learn from him. I don't want to be in the same situation where I'm being hated on. I think you do have to find a way to be the lovable person who can spit the truth. And I do think that the whole idea of the saying that the entertainer isn't the right vehicle. I mean, these people have also made mistakes, just like King did. I mean, King may have gone out and cheated with his wife or something like that. Maybe that was true, or maybe that was not true. Let's just say that it is for the sake of argument. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wanted to integrate into America. That's awful. But a lot of these entertainers are already integrated into that same America. And some of them know, and some of them don't know. And they maybe, how would I say it? Again, it's like in this country, in the United States, and all over the world, you know what I'm saying? It's difficult to basically to get us in a group. And even in the history of America, if you were together in two or three people that was considered a gang, this is historic. So anytime you got three black people on the national stage in America saying the same thing, and you know that they have a combined population of, you know what I'm saying, 1 million people who recognize who they are in the current scene and are willing to hear what they're trying to say, that shit's gonna be broken up. I don't want to blame our people. A lot of this is an individual thing. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. And knowing that we live in America, knowing that, you know, any kind of African socialism or socialization won't necessarily happen in this country easily, unless, you know what I'm saying, you do have to have a critical mass. I mean, some people just don't know. And the people who do know, we are truly, it's difficult because you're really asking a lot of people to do something. And like, what are these things that have to be done? You know what I'm saying? Make sure people are, you know what I'm saying, looking after the state, to make sure that they're not scheming on people. Look, you know what I'm saying? There's so many things that have to be done. And to say that the people who are put on TV, you know what I'm saying? I'm not, you know what I'm saying? They've done terrible things. And like people, I mean, you know what I'm saying? I was young, and you know what I'm saying? I was reckless. You know what I'm saying? When I was younger and reckless. I'm not going to throw them under the bus because they are people who, it's like you have to take the meat and spit out the bones. I know Snoop Dogg is not, you know what I'm saying, out here like the most intellectual person, but as he gets older, you know, I just take from him, and you know what I'm saying? I don't sit up here and like have, you know, I refer to Snoop Dogg as like, yeah, we should listen to what Snoop Dogg said.
Yeah, the problem though, I hear your point. I still disagree with that. I'm going to put it like this too about some other things you said. You said something along the lines of, yeah, there's this Black liberation struggle, but folks need to eat. Folks need to take care of other things at the same time. The reality of it is, and this is the problem is Black folks don't recognize that all of it is tied together. Your liberation is tied, your not being liberated is tied to your being a slave to all these different things you have to do. You have to make sure your house is in order, your bills are paid. I understand all of those things, but your liberation is tied to that too, and is done so intentionally. If you sit down here and say, well, because I have to raise my kids and I have to pay my car note, I ain't got no time to put my thinking or any of my efforts towards changing this reality that Black folks live under. That's a damn shame. That's a damn shame to say, listen, I was too busy. And by the way, who are you working for? You're working, 90% of Black folks working for this white man anyway. So to sit up here and say, well, man, I was too busy taking care of the shit that the white man has designed for me to have to take care of, or else I lose everything. Well, then you do understand what the struggle is. You do understand what the struggle is. You understand? And so you need to address it. If you want to get off of that hamster wheel, you got to address it. Marcus McGee says he thinks there's levels to consciousness. I used to think so too. I'm done with that now. And I explained why earlier, Marcus. You might not agree, but I am done with that thinking. Either you are aware or you're unaware. Either you're conscious or you're not. Because this levels thing, what this levels things allows for fuck shit to go on in the conscious community. There's some fuck shit going on right now in the continent. I'm not going to call no names. Y'all know who I'm talking about. That's some fuck shit that's going on right now. Some passport bros type shit. You feel me? And it's that level of consciousness shit that allows that stuff to pass and become funny and become entertaining. The stuff that Tariq Nasheed does, playing with fucking puppets and making cartoons and all that shit. That's what the level of consciousness idea does for us. Oh, Tariq is conscious, but he's on some fuck shit.
Yeah, I'm not with the conscious. That again, you know what I'm saying? Let's just throw out consciousness as the term that we're trying to use. Let's just say so cultural responsibility. Let's say that. I mean, for the record, I do work for a partially Black owned company. Let's just put it like that. One of the people I work for who owns the company is Black. Not 100%, but yeah, it is what it is. I mean, I can sit here and pride with say I work for a Black man.
That's good. My point is a simple one. I think The problem that we have is we give ourselves too many outs. We have too many exit doors in this thing. Oh, I gotta go pick my kids up. Bye, gone, out. When you pick up your kids, come back here and help us organize. Have your kids around people who are organizing, who are talking serious thoughts. Oh, I gotta go home and cook. Okay, go ahead. Bring your family. We have refreshments here.
Well, I guess, you know, once again, like not having hard buildings. I mean, not having actual, and I mean, I would say that when people talk about building, if it's not with building blocks, I don't know what's being built. Like, I mean, you know, if part of it is if you build it, they will come, but it really does have to be. There is something to be said about people who promise. You know, I will. You know what I'm saying? There's people who are out here promising to build stuff, and it's like it's just not happening. That is problematic. Just go ahead, do what you need to do, and just, you know what I'm saying. You know, if you're going to do it, go do it. You know what I'm saying? Part of it, you know what I'm saying. I know what you're saying by, like, you know what I'm saying, don't sell it, but you do have to bring, I mean, people aren't going to know automatically. So you do have to, when I say sell or advertise, I mean, bring attention to. That's what I ultimately mean myself, not physically like trade and barter with the attention with my, I mean, bring attention to. That a lot of that take, I mean, I just think that we have to have, I mean, when again, when people talk about, you know, we're going to build. I mean, we haven't. I mean, I want to build something. I mean, I don't want to build a skyscraper. Just a nice 1-floor building with a basement. You know, a place of 4 walls and a roof. And then once we do that, I mean, part of it is a place where people can talk, a headquarters. And then from that location, you can leave, come back, reassess. Anything short of that is kind of like still intangible. That's why that's why the church was so effective. And I mean, it's like, I want to take the church and hollow it out and, like, you know, put in, you know, black stuff. In fact, I would say the black church as it stands in America should be the black bank. As much money as black people put in the churches, if they like took out the preacher and put in a bank teller, you know what I'm saying, and figure out how to make that interest work, that would be the goal. I mean, that's basically what the Jewish community is. Their synagogues are the banks. They go in there, they meet each other, you know what I'm saying? They figure out how to put their money together to actually have physical stuff. Yeah, we put our money in banks for spiritual stuff.
Yeah, the Jews don't have to do all that selling either. They don't have to do all that buying in. But
well, a lot of that has to do with the nature of, like, them knowing, you know, the whole I mean, black people aren't allowed. Black people again aren't allowed to be as black in this country as we want to be. Like the
point is, real black gentlemen, is that it is doable. There are people who are doing it where they don't have to have all that buy-in and have to sell. But hold on a second. Let's welcome in Bwana Hagaziki. Bwana, how are you?
I'm good, brothers, man. I'm just getting back and just listening to the show.
Bwana, your volume is like a whisper.
Because I got his. Let me take this out then. Wait a second.
Yeah, let's give Bwana a second here to get his sound together. Yeah, anyway, while Bwana works that out. My whole point is there are other, you know, we've been in this situation long enough now. My God, how much more buy-in you have to sell to people, right? The Jews went through their shit, what was that, a 6-year period? In 1945, around that time there, like, come on now, we have to constantly sell. But what's so interesting? While consciousness has to sell, like serious consciousness, play consciousness, this is why I'm now again. And by the way, you have to update your outlook too. My outlook used to be that there was levels of consciousness. It's not that anymore, because you have to update. You have to look at what's happening and update your thinking. right? When folks are doing play consciousness, there's 6,000, 8,000 people in the chat room. You understand? But when it's serious thought, serious discussion, you'll be lucky to find 300. Let's see if Buana has a sound together. Buana, go ahead.
1 2 1 2. Can you hear me?
Yeah, much better.
I hope you can hear me. Great. So I just really wanted to, because I'm just getting back, and I just wanted to let the Black Americans know happy birthday to MLK. He is a respected person, and he did his part and his share in this world. And I think that he has given all of us the moral obligation to do our part in trying to bring about justice and fairness for our people in this world. And I think that the onus is on us to really do our part, whatever that may be. You're not going to take the reins of the whole movement, but do your part. Do your part. And what that part is, you kind of define it out. Don't wait for the so-called other people to do the work, and then you come in after the fact when everything has been done, all the work has been done, and say, well, okay, now I can do my part now. No. All of us as men need to get our hands in the soil and get our hands dirty and get to work and doing what it is that we need to do to be a productive people. And I think that Martin Luther King, people like him, would have given us this kind of task. So we need to take the mantle of responsibility and do our fair share. And I know we live in an age of where we look at actors and singers and performers or whatever, and we have the expectation of them doing what it is that we actively need to do for ourselves. And I think that I feel like that mantle of responsibility is on us. Ultimately, not our actors, not millionaires, not people who we watch on TV or worship as gods. It's the regular man on the street who Dr. Martin Luther King used to make changes in America. And it'll be the regular man on the street, black man on the street, who will do what it needs to be done to ensure that America sees the black man in a fair light, and not only in America, but the world itself. The black man needs to do what he needs to do. And if we escape that obligation, then we'll be 50 years from now, we'll be continuing it with these same kind of discussions that we need to do this and we need to do that. Bump that. It's time, because our lifespan is limited. We only promise really a brief period of life. So what we do with that life, which it should matter, because Martin Luther King them and come and gone, Garvey them and come and gone. What are we going to do on the ground right now? And it can't just be in disputing what athletes saying and what shysters saying and scammers. These scammers online now, they doing their work. They just get up every morning and do that dirty work. So we need to have that same kind of persistence. I know we have our 9 to 5s to go to. I know we have our own personal obligations, but we also have a community obligation to and even if it's in a small measure, we need to do it. We need to get it done. So I agree with Koku, and in some regards, I agree with real black gentlemen, in saying that we need to get certain things done in this world in this time. But I'll leave it there.
No, that's absolutely correct. That's exactly what I'm trying to get across. We got to stop giving ourselves these outs too. What's up to the Forecast Radio? He's out there saying what's up to us. So what's up, Forecast? Yeah, but we gotta stop giving ourselves the outs. If you find yourself in the middle of a desert with half a canteen of water, you don't move slow. You move faster. We got to get ourselves moving faster. And this idea that because I got my kids and I got to see about that. Yeah, I got to see about that too. But we got to start to understand better. It's all connected. The Jews understand that. They understand when they go to worship at synagogue, that's connected to their local economy. That's connected to their organization where they meet and discuss ideas and determine what's the direction the community is going to move in. They do all that around their synagogues and shit. So what are we doing? And all we doing is giving ourselves the excuse. Well, some people don't know. Bump that, to use Buana's term. Bump that. These people know. The street dude who I was just reading something in my hometown, some fellow who killed someone in 2019, they killed him today. So you know when to act, right? You know when to act. When it's your own people, you know how to act and carry out violence and this, that, and the other. But when it's time to do something for the community, for the group, for all of us worldwide, all of a sudden we don't know what to do. We don't know no better. Now we gotta stop giving ourselves that excuse. We had too much people die in this thing. I've outlived Martin Luther King by a bit now. I've outlived Marley by a bit now. I've outlived Malcolm X and a bunch of them by a bit. We're supposed to see a little bit more in this life, in this time that we're here together. We're supposed to see a little bit more. Greetings to Sister Raw out there. Thank you for coming through. It's almost at the end now, but thanks for coming through all the same. Real Black Gentleman, Buana, you guys could give your last thoughts on something that MLK said. I've been posting quotes a bunch during the broadcast.
Can I speak?
Any quotables from MLK? Go ahead, Real Black.
Yeah, I mean, not quotables. Just remember that, like, before he was assassinated, he was fighting for the sanitation workers to make, because like the sanitation workers, there were two black sanitation workers who tried to take lunch in a garbage truck, and the truck was faulty. They had to take lunch in the truck because they weren't allowed to eat like inside. So the two brothers were in the truck. The truck malfunctioned and it crushed them. That was one of the reasons that was like one of the impetus for the Poor People's March. That he was just trying to look for. That was what he was trying to give support to the trash man. And I mean, it's difficult. I personally, I mean, I don't want to. If I were to say what I really wanted to say, I would, you know what I'm saying? I think people would not hear me. I would just be blowing Steve. But a lot of people, we are really in a burning house right now. And let's not forget about that. We are in right now. This is a burning house. So a lot of what we try to do in this house, it winds up being incinerated before we even like get it going. So as long what we organize, it can't. And unfortunately, a lot of it has to be short term. It has to be tactical organization. It has to be organization for a specific purpose. And then once that's done, we can break up. Because a lot of it is just this country is monitoring all black people. For, you know what I'm saying? We can't sit here and just do something and like act like, you know, a lot of times it's not good to be all watched and looked on because people are gonna muddy it up. And that's what happens. I'm gonna pass.
Yeah, there's more to America though. That's the thing I want black folks to recognize. There's more to America, man. There's more places for black folks to set up camp, as they say, and put in the work. We keep thinking about America all the time. And I know if you're from America, you probably would think about America, but there's more to it. We are black people, we are African people. There's more to it than this stuff, man.
I just hope that the people around the world see that this is what America does. Like we are in the belly of the beast. They're going to go out there and do the same thing that they do to black people all over the world. So whatever they do to America, the best thing people generally around the world say, look, they doing that to them black people. I don't know if we need this American, this, that, and the third.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That's also problematic too. But from what I understand, when you look at folks on the continent, for example, if you follow in Oni, as he's in Tanzania, stuff will happen here in America, and people in Africa ain't even business with that. They ain't checking for that, you know. So we got to understand that there's a whole other world out there where folks ain't really focused on this American thing. But the reality of it is we have to be focused on this reality thing, which is we don't design our realities. We are living in another man's idea. You understand? And his idea of us is not good in that idea. So we have to do something different. Buana, what say you?
Yeah, yes, sir. So two quotes I would like to quote from Dr. MLK, what I could remember. He said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So I want my American brothers to understand that even though the conditions that y'all live under currently, it seemed like, all one set of people getting what they need to get, and the other set of people are not getting what they need to get. They have to realize as soon as you unjust a part of your citizenry, your country is gonna effectively fall apart. It may take a long time, but it's gonna fall apart. And if you continuously mistreat, a part of your citizenry, after a while, you really headed for a fall. So if the American government doesn't understand that and wants to continue the way it does, it's gonna go the way of Greece and Rome and Egypt. It's gonna go that way. And that's an unfortunate thing. Another thing he said, and I think that this is more in regards to us in particular, us, the black world. Martin Luther King said it. We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools. And I think that the brothers them need to understand, yes, we have disagreements. Yes, we don't always see eye to eye on things, but we have external enemies that are bigger, bigger than our internal grudges and our little scuffles that we have with one another from time to time. And what I think is that we have to decide to live together, live with the fact that, yes, I may disagree with this man. Yes, we may not see eye to eye for everything. But if I play this game of him, me, and I'm not him, the both of us gonna perish together. The both of us. And that's not only nationally, and that's not only locally, that's globally as well. So either y'all gonna stay in your little small distinctive enclaves and say, well, he ain't like me and I'm not like him, while the outside world see y'all as one big Negro, or y'all gonna fight from one united front, as one united front, and say, well, this is us. We are the African man and woman, whether I'm in the Bahamas or whether I'm in the United States or whether I am in Africa. And you either gonna deal with us fairly or you ain't gonna deal with us at all. We're gonna stand together in this so-called global competition. It is what it is. But I appreciate the time, Koku. I appreciate you, real black gentleman, man. I appreciate you giving this thing on MLK for the day. I say happy birthday to my American brethren and sisters, and I'm out.
Thank you for that. Let's welcome in Gas them up. One of you might want to stick around. Gas just joined us. Gas, how are you today?
Hey, what's going on, brothers?
Good. What say you to all of this? I don't know if you've been listening or not, but what says you to all of this?
I mean, with MLK, I think, like I said, hindsight is always 20/20. So I think we should definitely appreciate what he did and things that he put in place. So for me, I don't want to speak negative about him, but I just think that, when we contextualize certain things and we start to ask ourselves what's going on behind the scenes, we see that, black leaders have always been selected. And that doesn't mean he shouldn't be celebrated, but there is a selection process. And we've never had, in my opinion, for the most part, black leaders that the people are choosing. So, that's just my little 3 cents on it. So I have nothing against MLK personally, but I think we're not doing a good enough job to build and further the knowledge from where, MLK was at.
Let me ask you guys, what do you think? Because the argument that I've been putting here since we watched that documentary is that I think we give ourselves as a people, worldwide too, I think we give ourselves too many outs in this struggle. We think that our home life and the things that we need to be concerned about personally, we think it's separate from the from the larger picture of the struggle. I mean, do you see it that way or no?
So say that last part, because I want you to flesh it out so I make sure I fully understand that last sentence there.
All right. So what I'm saying is, Real Black Gentleman said earlier, he intimated that, the problem is a lot of people don't know. And I'm saying people know, even on a rudimentary level, people know this is not our reality. We are not in control of anything. And then he said something along the lines of, folks have things to do. They got to see about, they have a job to work and, children to raise, or, things of that nature, right? And I'm saying that all of those things are tied to this reality that we're living in, that if you can't separate it and say, well, I ain't got time to organize, or I ain't got time to try to build a different vision because I got these children to take care of. All of that is part and parcel with the struggle. All of that is related to this reality. You have those things to think about largely because of the reality that they've put you in, right? I think you put it like you're just a rhyme in a rhyme book or something like that one time, right? In someone else's rhyme book, like, because of where you are in this, because of the position they've put you in, right? All of these different things you're dealing with is part and parcel with the struggle. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to see if you think that they're different, that, yeah, people can't organize because they're too busy taking care of things in their lives, this, that, and the other. I'm trying to say we got to stop giving ourselves these outs and really get down to work, roll up our sleeves and get to work, get to thinking about how we change this shit. We've been going through this shit for too long. What say you?
Yeah, so I agree with you. That is part of the struggle, but I wouldn't necessarily. I think part of the problem, at least for me, is like I can't carry. Carrying people along is problematic, right? I think when we look at Malcolm X or Martin Luther King or whoever, I think they've served their purpose, right? They've presented the ideas, and it's up to us to build off those ideas as best as we can. I can't task a grandmother or a single mother to be the best Garveyite or to, engage in philosophical thinking. That's not fair to her. That's not fair to them. Her priority is to feed her children as best as she can within whatever realm of blackness, hopefully, under that, right? So I'm not so harsh on people in that. I am harsh on the people who present themselves to say that we're intellectuals or we are going to speak up in an intellectual manner for people that look like you and I, right? And when they're not realizing that a lot of things that they're expressing or expounding upon are rehashing certain ideologies that come from the people we say we're trying to escape, that's where I throw my line in the sand, and I say, okay, let's put these cannons to test out the strong idea. And so for me, that's where I'm at, like, because is it fair to ask, like I said, a single mother or a guy who got to work, double shifts as a sheriff or something, to follow along with something that he might not be able to feed his family if he takes that ideology to the job? So I don't know.
No, I'm not asking for anyone to take an ideology anywhere. I am saying that everyone, even the granny, because what's the old African saying that when an elder dies, is like burning a library. The granny has knowledge, granny has insights, granny has thoughts. She's seen things, right? And we out here trying to get organized, and get an understanding of what we can do to change our situation. Granny is useful, and if granny got to take care of if granny got to look over some children, bring them to the organization and let them play over there while we sit down here and talk and reason out what we got to reason. There comes a point, and I think this is the bottom line question. And by the way, We're not going to stay here too much longer. It's 6 minutes to 2 hours. So at 2 hours, I'm going to stop. But we have to really seriously ask ourselves one fundamental question. And that question is, are we trying to get out of this situation? Are we trying to get out of this situation, or are we just trying to stay in it and do better, do a little bit better while in the situation? See, me personally, I'm thinking we need to get the fuck up out of it. And so we got to if we got to get up out of it, we got to go put that work in. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, it's like programming, right? So you can't replace a person's program. You can't replace Microsoft Word for someone's computer without Google Docs, right? So you have to give them a replacement. And to be honest, if you don't have the force to force a mass of people to go along with it, then it becomes problematic. So that's why, for me, just me personally, I'm not worried about the mass of people. It's for those who get the frequency, and they should be able to, or they can take that frequency and create institutions and create, machinery or some sort of mechanics that the larger people can now engage with. Just the same way Isaac Newton and these European philosophers, they took philosophies that they had, and then the practical engineers built and expanded upon those philosophies that they came up with.
Okay, I feel you on that. I don't know if that really answered the question, though. Are we trying to get out of this, or are we just trying to cozy up and individually get better, better access as individuals? My thinking is, let's get the hell up out of this. And to get up out of it, and I think, and this is no disrespect to you, Gas, or anyone else, but I think what it really comes down to, I think Black folks just don't want to put in the work, man. I think Black folks have just come to this point of, I'm good here. I'm good here. I get access to my cable TV. I could drink a cold one at the end of the day, and I'm good here. And my thing is, that's fine. Just be honest about it. Just say, listen, you guys, MLKs, Malcolm X's, you guys who have been dying for a cause, don't do that no more. Don't worry about it no. We're good. Yeah, sure, one day at this rate, we'll be back on a plantation. Sure, one day at this rate, sure, that's fine. We'll deal with that one. Or those people will deal with it, because that's how I think Black folks think too. Black folks don't think of our future as our people. We think of them as those people. So those people will have to deal with that enslavement down the road. I'm not cool on that. So that's my thing. I want Black folks to just be honest. Are you trying to get out of this situation? Or are you just trying as individuals to get you and your people around you, your nuclear families, into a better position under this this regime, if you will? And so that's where I'm coming from.
That's what everyone is doing, right? That's what you're answering it, because we look at the actions. That's what it is that they're doing. And that's why I'm like, I can't be the philosopher and his poor. Right, because ever since Western philosophy, it's like Karl Marx, right? He sits down there and gives accurate observations to a certain degree about, capital, but he never worked a day in his life. You get what I'm saying? So he doesn't have any practical application. So the philosophers always philosophized about the poor, but a lot of times the philosophers don't come from the poor. That doesn't mean that what they've said are incorrect, but a lot of it might be missing certain things. And so I think people generally, as you said, just go along to get along. It's hard work to escape Babylon. It's not easy.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not easy at all.
And so, again, like I'm saying, I would prefer if Black folks just, one way or another, Black folks just speak up and said, you know what? y'all don't worry about this strategizing thing. Don't worry about the organizing, man. Let I see after in the chat says personal peace and prosperity, the ultimate God of this world. You know, I don't know how to take that exactly, right? I don't know how to take that exactly, but it seems to me that folks just really in it, you know, to do what they do, concern themselves with what is near to them, and fuck everything else. And my saying is, if that's the case, as a people, we need to step up and say that's what it is, because we've had too many people who've put their life on the line, who made their life work to try to change the situation. And what I'm saying is, as the masses, to use your term, a Newtonian term, as the masses come together and say, man, don't worry about it. We good where we are. I could respect that more. And Tanzan said some of us are too comfortable. I want to change that some to most. And let's just be honest about it. You know, and ask for forgiveness that we allowed guys in the past on the continent. We allowed guys in the Caribbean. We allowed guys in America and all over to be killed behind this idea of changing our reality, and you guys don't want to change it. We gotta start to be honest about this shit now.
But Coco, why are people still trying to hold on to that dead weight?
Pardon me?
Why are people still trying to hold on to that dead weight? Now, I know why, but it's just like, you know, my thing is, I think sometimes there's survivor's remorse, right? There's survivor's arrogance, right? I think what's happened for me and my epiphany, I can only speak for myself, is I came to the realization that, you know what, look, I'm not here to fix the group of people. Only thing I can do, because I don't have the force necessary to implement that. So only thing we can do, or that I can do, is put out ideas and live as best within my circumstances to where enough people can, hey, you know, that was a great idea. In the future, who knows? Maybe there might be one Shaka Zulu or, you know, Koku Zulu in whatever country who plays back some of the, you know, Bitter Medicine podcast videos and hears something that you said or hears something that I said, and they're able to use it to, you know, put things in place in their position where they are. I think that's all I can do. But this idea that I can, you know, get grandma and these people on board, I personally just think that, you know, no, that's not going to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I appreciate the honesty. This is what I'm talking about, guys. I wish everyone else will come and say the same thing. I appreciate the honesty. You see what I'm saying? But to come and to act like, oh, well, I've read, you know, Amos Wilson is my favorite, and Dr. John, dude, you don't care about that shit, really. Most of these folks don't really care, is what I'm starting to realize, and it's a shame that we allow people to be quote unquote scholars in this thing and lifelong enthusiasts and working towards something that, when you again, I'm going back to what you said. I like the idea, the Newtonian idea of mass. You're correct. It's like we don't have the force, because mass requires force, right? We don't have the force as individuals. But what I'm saying is, you mean to tell me we as men, as collective as men, we can inspire other men? And in fact, forget the word inspire, because inspire means that we got to change something. Like I told Real Black Gentleman earlier, most of our people know what's going on. Most of our people in some form or fashion know exactly what's going on. It might be in a real primitive way, a real rudimentary way, but most of us know what's going on. Like I said, the guys in the streets, the gangsters, they know if they cross that particular street, if they cross Market Street, if they cross Andrews Avenue, they know that that's a longer jail. So on a fundamental level, they understand the reality. So what do? They cowardly stay in their community and harass their own people. What I'm saying is, you mean to tell me we will just sit here and let all of these machinations go on around us, I won't throw a stick in the spokes to stop anything. Real black gentleman, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know how to say it because it is frustrating. I wish I could go. I mean,
real black.
Yeah.
Make your statement. Also, make your last statement as you make your statement, and then I'll get Gassim up to make his. Because, like I said, I don't want to say anything.
Okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's how would I say it? The prophet is never recognized in his hometown, as it were. What we do locally, I mean, I swear I lived with a dude and we sat here and we would watch videos and I opened my mouth and I would say, come on, like let's do something. Let's try to just spontaneously, like for real. Let's come on, like let's do it right now. I don't know, it's difficult. I've been there and with people close to me who, when I want to do stuff, there's just the energy, the closest people to you, it's difficult. Like it's difficult. The whole idea that, we are all black. We know that the police go at us, but the problem is everyone doesn't know all the details. And some of us know a lot more details than others. And when you say the details out your mouth, it's like a foreign language. It's like you just told them the key. And to them, it's like, that's a whole bunch of sand. What did you just say to me? I just told you the key. I just told you, I feel like and the problem is like, if I were in the situation to put everyone in the room, sit everyone down and to do what I want them to do, that's what my biggest fear is, because it would take months to get those people to really see what it is that I'm just in my head. And it's not about I don't want to build, how would I say it? Like when I say build, I actually want to physically do something. And even knowing that, something can be torn down. The whole point is to allow for an unbroken stream of people who literally it's like, there has to be an organization. It's like the NIA for all my criticism, naturally they're kind of uniformed out. Now, if you can kind of we don't do a very good job of literally cherry picking out what's good, putting it all together and then really making it work. Instead of saying that was bad and this is good. We all know good is in everything. So let's sit down and cherry pick. I think cherry pick what's good. Figure out where the contradictions are in all those, because some two good things might not be good for each other. It's not impossible, but a lot of it does have to do with, I don't know. There's going to be no one day of just everyone coming together. I think the days of a lot of physically coming together, it does work, but it's we almost have to I don't know. It's difficult. We do need to constantly say what the reality is for Black people and the things that are oppressing us. We constantly have to do that. I mean, all of them, Google is terrible. I think I would say the worst thing for Black people is YouTube itself. But that in organizing another format outside of that would be the best thing. I would say that, but I mean, damn. I mean, I don't, and it's naturally I get, I would get criticized, or critiqued for not being able to put my next move into a public platform. But it's all we can do is it's almost all of us can what we're doing is saying, help, this is a good idea. And for another person out in the ether to kind of take the idea. And it's I hear your frustration, sir. I do. I wish we could just form like Voltron. I'm a pass.
No, I appreciate you, real Black gentleman. And Buana's been giving you some advice. Just act on your idea. Now, what I'll tell Buana is I think Black folks deal in too much sloganism sometimes. A lot of times, actually. I think Black folks deal in too much sloganisms of, oh, just do it. If you build it, they will come. And that's, to build something is very, very hard to do. I'm not discouraging it, because as you see, I try to put in some work in my own way here. But what what I'm trying to get people, in fact, what I'm trying to get people to do is not just have to do stuff individualistically, but I'm trying to get others to see a man doing something and say, hey, let me come here and help. You know, let me come here and help. I see you starting to build this thing. I know this ain't going to be easy. Let me come here and help. Let me get Gas. Let me get your last thoughts, Gas.
No, I think, like I said, everybody should build as best as they can, whatever institutions, but understand that the system that we are under, it was built with the use of, force. It was built with, engaged cooperation, forced cooperation, a lot of things that were set up in that way. So, I think that's what we have to understand. But I'm not, me personally, like I said, I'm not too worried. I think the people are going to do what the people are going to do. What I feel is that the high priest, and I hate to use that term, but it's not about Dubois, it's not about being a talented 10, but what we got to do is the people who are like-minded need to build with themselves, and everything else, that's all you can handle. You can't sit there and try to lose yourself. And like you said, people have spilled blood, and they out here twerking. So people's out here twerking for Martin Luther King. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Make sure you guys subscribe to Gas Them Up's channel. Just look at his name right here. Let me put it up so people can see it. Look at Gas Them Up's name. Shit, how do you do this? Okay, look at Gas Them Up's name. And subscribe. He has a show that he does with Tanzan African Mind, who's in the chat, and Jose. The three of them usually come on Shoot the Breeze as well. They have a show called The Black Pentagrammers. Check out their content. Very good stuff. Real Black Gentleman has become a regular around KWAZ Radio on different shows. He sometimes shows up in the chat room for the Black Pentagrammers, so shout out to him. So that was my presentation. I showed the documentary on the assassination of MLK. It got into a good discussion at the end. If you missed it, go back and just watch the documentary itself. And in the meantime, I should be back on Saturday. I put out a short about interviews. So if you check out the short and tag people, don't just give me names, but tag them off of YouTube, tag them to the prompt. That helps them to see that they were recommended, and that gives me an easier way to get at them about getting this interview. So again, for Real Black Gentlemen and others, I'm building something. What are you guys going to build? And the thing is, the rest of you don't just sit back and watch someone build something and then show up at the end talking about you don't like the drapes in here. Don't wait till the end. Show up. If you weren't there at the beginning, that's cool. But at some point early on, show up and just volunteer your time. If you could afford to give monies towards efforts, do that. Because the grifters and the imbeciles in Black society, they're not doing anything, but they got the people following them, propping them up, and all this kind of stuff. So if you're serious-minded, what are you going to do? You're letting the unserious beat you out in the work. What are you going to do? And like I said, I'll just appreciate someone saying to me, yo, I'm going to come through and I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to do this show for y'all. I'm going to come through. I'm going to deal with the web design or whatever it is, right? Whatever it is, whatever small thing it is, come and add something. Don't just sit back entertained. We got to get off the being entertained thing. Anyway, y'all, that's the show for tonight. Happy MLK Day. I'll see you guys on Saturday. You guys be good. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, We hope you pass along our web address, bitamedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Beta Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Beta Medicine Show, Twitter, Beta Meds, Tumblr, Beta Meds, Instagram, Beta Medicine.